Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. So today we are again continuing the Mahasakuludayi Sutta. And we've been continuing this sutta for a couple of days now. I must admit to you that there are a number of Mahasakuludayi suttas within the Tipitaka. And initially this was not the sutta that I was supposed to choose. But I mixed it up. I mixed it up and posted this. So I thought, okay, I'll go ahead with it. Right? Now, what we are going to be doing today is we are going to go into, we've finished the 5 reasons, or rather we've not finished, but rather we are now at the moment of where we are going into the subsets of the path to awakening within the sutta, right? And most of the sutta is actually taken up by the 7 or the 37 parts of awakening, right? Or what we have seen as the limbs of awakening, right? Now today what we are going to go into is we've finished the Eightfold Noble Path, most of which we have already come across with other teachings as well. And today we are going to actually start or go into sort of this is not a part that many people actually learn, right? I don't think I've even heard a desana on this specific part that we are going to be touching today, because it is a bit of a deeper part or a deeper aspect of the dhyana practice, which is usually not discussed with sort of, which is not usually discussed, right? So good. So we are going to go into this sutta today. It's a bit exciting. It's a bit exciting, but something that I must say is, now if you would turn to page number 215. If you do turn to page number 215, we see the 8 liberations, right? The 8 liberations. And then if you move down, we see the 8 bases of mastery. And then we go down even further, and what we find is the 10 kasinas, right? Now, these three topics with regards, now these are not, although it is spoken of within the sutta separately, these 3 topics are the path of practice in terms of jhana, right? In terms of jhana. Now, if you have experience of going through sutras of the Digha Nikaya, the attitude by which the sutras, the culture of the Digha Nikaya sutras are quite different from the culture of the other sutras. The Digha Nikaya sutras has a culture where it is taught in a way to impress an outsider, right? It is taught in a way that it is meant to impress an outsider, right? I think that is the reason why we have now, look, the 8 liberations, then we have the factors of mastery, the basis of mastery, and then we have the kasinas, right? Now the kasinas, the 8 liberations that we come across first, is what is the goal. That is what we are trying to reach, isn't it? You understand that by the word liberation, right? Then we come across the 8 bases of mastery. What is the basis of mastery? Is the tool, right? And then we come across the 10 kasinas. Now that is the practice, right? That is the initial practice which then we master and then which takes us into liberation, right? But in this sutta, we find it expounded the other way around. But because we are approaching these subjects, as people who are traveling the path of Dhamma, walking on the path of Dhamma, it is only appropriate that we start this specific 3 types of this cluster of teaching from the 10 kasinas, not from the liberations, right? Not from the liberations. So we will go down to the kasinas. We will go down to the kasinas. Furthermore, Uday, the path has been shown to my... Can someone read? Damsiri, can you read it, please?
Oh, which one you are talking about? The kasinas?
The 10 kasinas.
Now, furthermore, Uday, the path has been shown to my disciples, practicing which they would cultivate 10 kasina bases. 10 kasina bases are earth kasina, water kasina, fire kasina, wind kasina, blue kasina, yellow kasina, red kasina, white kasina, space kasina, consciousness kasina. Okay.
Kasina, consciousness kasina. Thank you, Vidana. Now, when we look at these kasinas, the last 2 kasinas, which is the space kasina and the consciousness kasina, right? The space kasina and the consciousness kasina. In the path of practice, it has been changed, right? Now, this change occurred after the translation. So after, actually, this change occurs within the Vishuddhimagga. This change occurs this change happens within the teaching after Venerable Buddha Ghosha's inception. Why does this happen? Now, there are many stories and controversies regarding Venerable Buddha Ghosha, of which I must personally say that I do not share any of the thoughts regarding those controversies personally, neither do most Theravadin bhikkhus. Thus said, the reason that we have adopted from the space kasina and the consciousness kasina, these in theoretical approach the sutras theoretically, most people then use the word space kasina and consciousness kasina. Approaching the teachings for a practice basis or reasons of practice, we refer to this as the light kasina, and the space kasina. If you do remember the reasons as to why, we will come by when we do come into that level, but you would see, just to do not be confused by this consciousness kasina which is there, right? Do not be confused by the consciousness kasina which is there. We have already done it. It is only a process of renaming it to ease a person who is practicing, right? But when it comes to theory, we would use space and consciousness rather than light and space kasinas, right? Rather than light and space kasinas. Now, let me remind you, again, let me emphasize to you, these 3 sections, you can write a thesis on this, right? This is like the stages of Vipassana. This is the entire dhyana practice and how you turn the dhyana practice into liberation. This is it right here. These three categories, right? So before we move on, let us recap, right? The 5 reasons we have the Adi Sila, which is the higher, more moral virtue. Then we have Jnana Darsana, which is knowledge and vision. Then we have higher wisdom or Adi Panya. Then we have the 4 noble truths, Chatu Arya Satcha. And then we have come across the path to awakening. And we are in or within this path to awakening subset, right? Within the path of awakening, we have gone through the 4 focuses of mindfulness. We have gone through the 4 right strivings. We have gone through the 4 parts of spiritual power. We have gone through the 5 spiritual faculties. We have gone through the 5 spiritual powers. We have gone through the 7 awakening factors. We have gone through the 8-fold noble path. Now, from the Satipatthana or the 4 focuses of mindfulness up to the last class, what we have been discussing is the Bodhipakya Dhammas, right? Or the limbs of awakening, or the 37 limbs of awakening. That is what we have been discussing up to the last class, right? Now, today, what we are going to start discussing on are the dhyana-based practices. The dhyana-based practices, right? And the dhyana-based practices are the 8 liberations, the 8 bases of mastery, the 10 kasina bases. The 8 liberations is Atta Vimokha. Then we have Atta Abhidhyayatana, right? Not Abhinyayatana, Abhidhyayatana. If you say Abhinyayatana, it's a completely different thing. Abhidhyayatana, right? So BH long A, right? Vyayatana, and we have the 10 kasinas. This is the Dasa Kasinayatana, right? Dasa Kasinayatana. Then we will be going into, just to shed light on what we will be doing further, is the 4 jhanas we'll be going into, but we have already actually gone into the 4 jhanas in our other classes as well, but we will be discussing the 4 jhanas today as well, right? The insight knowledge of the conscious body, knowledge of the mind-made body, psychic powers, the divine ear or clairaudience, mind reading, knowledge of recollection of past lives, the divine eye, right, which is the knowledge of karma, knowledge of the destruction of the mental hindrances, right? Now, those, what we are from the psychic powers to the knowledge of the destruction of mental influxes is what we call the Chalabhinya, right? That is the Chalabhinya are the 6 super knowledges or superpowers, some people call it, but we actually call it super knowledges, right? Abhinya, right? So Chalabhinya, Chala is 6, Chalabhinya is the 6 super knowledges, right? The 4 jhanas, insight into knowledge of the conscious body and knowledge of the mind-made body, that is what is the word to use? An extraction of the Samanya Phala Sutta, right? It is an extraction of the Samanya Phala Sutta, and this is the pericope of the dhyanas, right? It is a pericope of the dhyanas. So to say that today onwards, we are going to focus more upon the dhyanas and how the dhyanas can be, or the absorptions can be used in a way that we get rid of are hindrances, not suppress, get rid, right? In a way that you will also learn today how you bring in a not, I don't know whether you learn it today, but we'll be learning with my chatty mouth, this might go on forever, but we'll be learning how to turn the dhyana practice into vipassana as well, and how through the development of dhyana also you can instigate the development of a vipassana practice, right? Through a vipassana practice. So this is in the former sutta that I originally wanted to do. That Sakuludayi sutta only touches on the limbs of awakening. Right now, this has become a whole thesis almost, right? This has become a whole thesis almost, but it's good. It is good, or else I wouldn't have actually personally chosen it, because this is a very deep sutta, right? It is a very deep sutta, especially this specific part that we are going to go into. So I'm going to try to go in a way that that we will all be able to understand what we are what the practice is. Now, before this practice, Veera very kindly read to us the kasinas. It is mentioned within the commentaries that one should not attempt to practice the kasinas without a foundation practice of meditation. The commentary suggestion on this regard is anapanasati and metta bhavana. Right? The commentary says that the foundation practices that one should have, or one should practice before going into kasina bhavana, is either anapanasati. Actually, it says anapanasati and metta bhavana, not or and, right? So to use it together, right? This is called a foundation practice, or a foundation meditation, to be much more exact. This is because the kasina meditations, it also mentions that the kasina meditations, if done without these foundation meditations, the meditator would not develop, the meditator would fail very much miserably. Very much miserably, because it is a practice which demands some sort of a level of strength in terms of focus, in terms of understanding, in terms of prajna, which then allows the mind to advert to the kasina objects in the level that it demands for the practice. Within these kasinas, we know that the kasinas, although these kasinas are practiced in order to attain dhyanas, these kasinas are also practiced in regards to bringing about a practice that is that brings a difference, a freshness into the vipassana practice as well, and we've discussed it briefly before. Out of these dhyana practice, out of these kasina practices, it is said that one should not touch any of the kasinas without the foundation practices. But one technique that one can touch and one could use very much freely is the light kasina. Why is this? This is because the light kasina is a very light. Basically, it is a very light kasina. The light kasina is a very light kasina, and it brings a sense of freshness and newness to the practice. It also takes away the overwhelming attributes of the meditation and eases up the mind and creates a more relaxed environment in the mind. So one could actually freely use the light kasina in one's practice as well, not the rest of the kasinas. That is very clearly mentioned within the commentaries. It is also a way, the anapanasati and the metta bhavana, why these foundation techniques of meditation are prescribed is because these techniques, when practicing kasina, will also help one to refresh. Because practicing kasina, let me tell you, with regards to samatha oriented subjects, it can become very, very boring. it can become very, very sort of bland. It can sometimes feel as you are in a very monotonous practice, and it can sort of, you can very easily fall away from it. So these practices of anapanasati and the metta bhavana are for the reasons of having a safe base. It is for the purpose of recharging ourselves and re-energizing ourselves, right? Recharging ourselves and re-energizing ourselves. With regards to the bases, 8 bases of mastery, the sutta that predominantly speaks about, right? The sutta that predominantly speaks about the 8 bases of mastery, and many of the subjects that we are going to be talking about today, actually including the 8 liberations as well as the 8 kasinas, is within the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Make sure you take notes down today, right? Make sure that you take note down today. Is within the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. So it is in the Sakuludayi Sutta what we are with regards to these dhyana oriented practices, that dhyana based practices that we are going to start discussing today. Most or the main moola of these extracts are from the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, right? Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Now, when it comes to the practice, I've told you, within the Digha Nikaya, it is the attitude maintained within the sutras of the Digha Nikaya is to impress the outsiders, meaning those who are not Buddhists, those who are not practitioners, right? So what the Buddha would usually, or how the sutras would be usually taught to these people is, first of all, the people would be given an awe, right? That is why the liberation is spoken of first, to give people a sense of awe. And then how it is done, the tools that we use is then mentioned afterwards, right? So that is the reason why today we are starting off with the kasinas and moving upwards, or else it's going to be really confusing, right? Or else it's going to be really confusing. And please note that most of the things that we are going to be discussing, it overlaps, right? For example, the stages of mastery overlap certain stages of liberation, right? Now, this liberation that we are talking about is liberation leading, helping, guiding towards Nibbana, but it is not only Nibbana which is spoken of. For example, the liberation by means of the jhanas are mentioned, the immaterial jhanas are mentioned, the varna kasinas, the color kasinas are mentioned. All of these are mentioned, and you might find that it sort of coincides or overlaps with the topics that we have already discussed. When that problem arises, I will tell you why that is there, right? Why that is there. So don't be confused. Your savior is here. Oh my gosh, I must apologize for that. Right? Okay. So when we go on with the Kasina meditations, right, we have the okay. As we go on to the Kasina meditations, we go on or tread on the Kasina meditations by this base of dhyana, right? For this base of dhyana. Now, in this base of dhyana, we must understand that the consciousness is divided up into 2 personas, right? What are the 2 personas? The doer and the knower. The doer, please write that down. The doer and the knower. Now, the doer is the person. Now, this is for all of you who are meditating, who are, hoping, this is very important. The doer is a person who conducts the practice. The knower, what is the knower then? The knower is the person who knows the experience that that person has experienced, right? Now, for example, if one is to ask, if one is to ask, how does a person know that the dhyana has been achieved, right? How does one know that a dhyana has been achieved, right? This is explained by example. There is a story of the Buddha when he was in the city of Atuma, right? Have you heard of the city of Atuma, right? Now, in the city of Atuma, 4 oxen were struck down, and 2 brothers and 4 oxen were struck down by a powerful bolt of lightning. This powerful bolt of lightning was so bright, it created such a large sound, and very close where the Buddha was residing near Atuma, the Buddha was in a state of dhyanic absorption. It is said that the Buddha was in a state of being both conscious and awake. Now, when the Pali word used for this is Sanni Samano Jagaro, right? Sanni Samano Jagaro. Sanni Samano Jagaro. Conscious and awake. Now, what conscious and awake is? Of course, some people who do not have a basis of practice, the people who are academics would say that it is a state where one is fully aware, right? But one must understand that this specific state is where the mind is, the word which is used, write this down, effectively awake, but has cognitively shut down. Effectively awake, but cognitively shut down. That is the position that the Buddha was in, right? That was the position that the Buddha was in. Now, what does it mean to be effectively awake? To be effectively awake means awake not in the general sense of being awake and knowing everything that is going on, but rather effectively awake in a way that it helps or is an instrument which allows for you to keep within the absorption. That is what is meant by effectively awake, right? Effectively awake. Likewise, when we go down to the question of how does a person know that the person has entered upon a jhana, the first is, of course, the Buddha. The commentaries speak about the association of Kalyana Mitras and people who know the Dhamma, who will guide and help you in this understanding. But for you yourself, this doer is a person. Now, when you are meditating, you consistently keep your mind adverting to the object. At that moment, you are the doer. At the position of the knower, you come into a position where you are absolutely experiencing it, right? Where you are absolutely experiencing it. You are not questioning it at all. You know it just as you know that it is day. You are not questioning it, just as a bright saturating sort of happiness taking over the body with the experience that you are having in whatever experience of life. This experience taking over the body almost, you know it is there, you're not questioning it, there are no doubts in mind, right? There are no doubts in mind. If for example, in your mind there arises a question, am I Sotapanna? You are not Sotapanna. If in your mind arises, this doubt as to sort of say, have I achieved this dhyana? You have probably not achieved that dhyana, right? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Right? It is to say, if that doubt is there in any way, you have probably not achieved it. When you do achieve it, now of course within even Piyatan's documents, even other scholastic documents, people do go in to say that this is a very difficult position to explain or put or explain through language, because it is a very different feeling to what any language can express, right? So we sort of work with examples, we work with parables to sort of bring out what that experience could be. But within this experience, when you have achieved or attained to such sort of a jhana, a state, what happens is you know for absolutely, you are absolutely confident and sure that you have reached this specific state, that you have reached this specific state, right? Now, with regards to the kasina, we work with an external object, and we memorize this external object, right? We work with an external object, and we make an effort to memorize this external object. It is then that we say that we have this uggaha nimitta, right? That we have this uggaha nimitta, which is an acquired sign, right? And it is through that basis that we move on to then work with the kasina in order to achieve the jhana states, so on and so forth, right? It is with this patibhaga or this acquired sign that we move into developing the other higher states of mind. Now, when we talk about this sign that you have now acquired, when we talk about this sign that we have acquired, now with this detail, right, we would have to go into the size of the signs, the measurements, the distance that you have from the sign, all of this. But I think at this point we are going to be a bit more focused, or else we'll have to be going into, or else there will be no end to this class, right? So we are specifically going to stick on to, and we have discussed these things also little by little through the classes that we've gone through. So it is important that we sort of be more focused upon the ultimate goal of what we are trying to sort of achieve, right? With regard to the sign that we have achieved, there also comes a way of guarding, right? Now, this guarding is important because it is the way that you protect the sign in a way that you do not lose it, right? That you do not lose it. Now, how do you guard the sign? You guard the sign by way of abode. You guard the sign by way of resort. You guard the sign by way of speech. You guard the sign by way of person. You guard the sign by way of food, climate, and posture, right? There are 7 ways that we guard this sign. So you could imagine the amount of effort that one has to make in order to develop this sign and hold on to it. Develop the sign and hold on to it. Abode, resort, speech, person, food, climate, and posture, right? And posture. When it comes to these guarding, the way that we guard the sign. This relates to having an environment or being within an environment which does not hinder the practice. For example, let us not go deep into all of them, but if we just touch through them, the abode is now, if the monastery, if it is a monastery that you're meditating in, right? Now, what kind of place is it, right? Is it a very crowded place? Is it a very noisy place? Is this monastery do all of the other monks, the monastery, how the land is laid by, right? The sort of the abode, the animals who live within this area, right? All of these comes into being as well. Also, now within the Vishuddhimagga, it also speaks about things like Senasana Palibodha, or the disturbances of Senasana. It is to say, for example, when monasteries or meditation centers, etc., has very large dwellings, buildings, things to take care of. This is known as Senasana Palibodha. Why? Because you had to clean this, right? You had to take care of it. I mean, all of you know how difficult it is to maintain a house, right? So just imagine maintaining a monastery and different buildings. And so the monks, if there are not enough monks, something that could happen is the monks who are in the monastery, they would end up not having time for meditation. They would end up not having enough time to focus on the practice, that they will have to be cleaning all the time. So likewise, it is by means of getting rid of these disturbances which allows for one to be able to now devote one's time towards the practice. More details regarding this is specifically available on the Vishuddhimagga, should you have a further interest to investigate into it, right? But let us move on and sort of go into the other parts, right? The other parts. Now, the 4 element kasinas, right? The 4 element kasinas that we go through, we have the earth kasina, right? First, we have the earth kasina. Now, what is earth, right? Earth kasina is the kasina which concerns any sort of hardness, right? Any sort of hardness. We've learned that the earth kasina, that we can practice it, we have the disc that we make out of clay. And then this clay also, it goes into great detail onto what type of clay, how the feel of the clay should be, the proportions of the clay, the softness or the hardness of the clay, because when it dries, if it's going to chip off, if the clay is going to chip off, this will create a hindrance again, because your mind will be adverting to the chipped off pieces rather than the sign, right? The chipped off pieces rather than the sign. So it goes into great detail about how you prepare a earth kasina, right? Prepare a earth kasina. Now, but there is also another practice of the earth kasina, where we are able to contemplate on the hard, solidified factors of the earth element within oneself, right? Within oneself, but also we are able to contemplate on these subjects separately. What are the earth objects available to one, or the earth element? How can one contemplate on the earth element based upon oneself? Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho, Mansang, Naro, Atti, the parts of the body, right? The parts of the body are all parts that you can contemplate on as the earth kasina. As the earth kasina. Now, in your minds, if if you've been following along, the bell should be ringing, ding, ding, ding. Right now, this is where we bring in, or we are able to bring in, the precious practice of vipassana also, right? Where we are able to contemplate on the dissolution of the body through the factors of the parts of the body, through the factors of the parts of the body, through the practice of this earth kasina, through the practice of the earth kasina. So we go through the head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, body, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, membranes around the lungs, spleens, lungs, large intestine, small intestines, stomach contents, dung, right? And whatever else which is hard, soft, and clung to in terms of physical nature can be contemplated by means of the earth kasina. Can be contemplated by means of the earth kasina, right? And this is called the internal earth element. The internal earth element, right? Make a note of that. It is going to come in handy when we discuss the masteries next, because they are going to be using the word internal and external, right? Internal earth element, right? So the internal and the external element. Now then, what is the external element? The external element is how we then something out of the body. For example, the traditional earth kasina is the external element, that also which has this interface of, or the feature of hardness, softness, any sort of tangibility, that cohesive, that nature of tangibility is what we refer to as this earth element, as this earth element, right? As this earth element. When one is able to go through this earth element, now as you practice, go on to this earth element, then one is able to, now if one has gone through the traditional path of it, right, or the internal path of it, one can contemplate on the earth element with regards to the body, and through that earth element then go into the vipassana contemplations as well. But we are not going to talk about that right now, because our main focus within these three subsects today is going to be the jhana specifically. But when it comes to the practice of vipassana, we do use this technique to also, again, like I said before, when we practice vipassana techniques consistently, we do require a change of practice sometimes, right? And these are ways that we can bring about that change of practice, dependent upon what we are going through, the mentalities arising in our minds at the current moment, etc., right? That is something that we then use. That is the reason that we then have these different meditation subjects, which allows for the mind to be able to go into these different practices, and the results are different, let me tell you, right? When you, for example, if you go through a traditional practice of hardness, the way that you're approaching through the kasana, you will be able to manifest it out. Now, what you're beginning with, the internal practice of the kasina of the earth element within the body, is where you are now internalizing that earth element within the body in a way that you are more personally inclined to this subject, right? Of knowing the impermanent suffering and non-self within the organs, or within the contents of this existence, or within the context of this kaya or body, right? Now, this is specifically also spoken of in the Chulla Sunyata Sutta, where the Buddha goes into how we, Chulla Sunyata Sutta, where the Buddha goes into how we use these sorts of vipassana or these sorts of techniques in terms of internalized earth element based techniques, where we are able to go deeper into these subjects of vipassana through one's own body in a directed attention manner, right? I hope that you remember we discussed directed attentions as well, right? So this technique enables one to then go into observing the body or having an internal base more connected to the more finer parts of vipassana through this practice. Now, for example, this is more intimately related to the organic foundation of vipassana in a way compared to anapanasati, right? When, because you're really going into sort of the basis of your body itself, right? Basis of the body itself. Then we have the water kasina. The water kasina, when we practice the water kasina, now this, with regard to the water kasina, the point of study that we have to go deeper into the water kasina is through the Mahasakuludayi Ovada Sutta, right? Through the Mahasakuludayi Ovada Sutta, where it was prescribed by the Buddha to Venerable Rahula, right? To Venerable Rahula. Now here the water element too has an external and internal object. What is the external object? The external object can be a bucket of water. It can be an ocean, a river, right? It can even be a monk's alms bowl filled to the brim with water, right? It can even be a monk's alms bowl filled to the brim of water. It can be a hole in the ground or a rock where you have water collected within it, right? Likewise, this is what we refer to or has been referred to as the external water element. What is the internal water element? The internal water element can be contemplated by bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, skin grease, saliva, snot, oil of the joints, and urine, right? Those more watery factors of the body are taken up as the water element, internal water element, internal water element, right? Internal water element. So at one point, remember, now we will come to that when we come to the air element, but we've been practicing the internal, external without knowing with regards to even the breath that we will be coming to in the water element, in the air element. Even one could even practice the water element even with something like a fish bowl, a goldfish bowl, right? One could even use something like that to practice the water element, right? It is basically being able to memorize and bring to mind this nimitta or this element of water, right? This element of water. Then we have the fire kasina. The fire kasina, right, again, which is mentioned in the Rahula Vada Sutta, is the fiery nature or the fiery sensations that exist or arise when you practice Vedananupassana, the sensations that falls under the fire element. The fire element also the warmed nature, the aged, right? And burns all falls under the fire element, right? Or are objects internal that you can take as the fire element. Even burns, right? Even burns. And even when one consumes food, even when one consumes food, the digestive process can also be taken as the fire element, right? That process of digestion can also be taken as the fire element. Apart from now the external subject of the fire element, a fire can be taken as the fire element, a bonfire of sorts, a forest fire, a candle can be taken as the fire element as well, right? These are things that can, then there is also sort of a prepared sign where a fire is set ablaze, or wood is set ablaze, and when there is a fire, you would have a wall with a hole cut in the middle, hole cut out in the middle, and when you see the fire coming or sort of burning through this hole in the wall, that too can be taken as the fire kasina, right? That too can be taken as the fire kasina. Another thing that can be taken as the fire kasina is the sun, right? But don't try that, you will go blind, right? So, so don't try that, you will go blind. But even the sun, because it is sometimes, it is the perfect sort of object because it's circular, can also be taken, but we do not do that because you are blind. You could get blind with the sort of, it's not good for the eyes. But something that rishis used to do is fire sun, it's called light eaters they're called, right? Where from the time between, it depends from country to country. In India, it would usually be between the time of 6 to 6:30 almost, depending on the season, right? Where there is a way to sort of look up at the sun in the way that the beams of the sun, uh, is sort of comes down onto the eyes and the nose as well, right? And in a way of breathing, one sort of, it is said that this specific technique of meditation, you're able to sustain the body and the mind through the energy of the sun, right? Through the energy of the sun. And that is a practice within the practice of the rishis. And there are even actually Hindus, and it is even apparently practiced by some in India even up to today, right? Where they do consume the energy of the sun. I am not entirely clear on the whole processes of the sun eating techniques, but I do know that there are people, and there have been research conducted on people by BBC. There is a couple of documentaries even on BBC where it is concerning these sun eaters, right? Where it is concerning these sun eaters. Then we have the element of wind, right? Then we have the wind kasina. The wind kasina is, when we talk about the wind kasina, we are able to contemplate the internal wind element, right? With whatever wind that arises, or air-like, wind-like, air-like, that phenomena that arises within the body, right? This could be the air of the belly, right? This could be the wind in the chest, the wind in the limbs, the breathing in, the breathing out, even with sort of digestive winds. All of that as well, one could be able to attain to this or use it as a means of developing the air kasina, right? Now, this does not mean, please do not misunderstand. Now, of course, the breath is always there, so you can use it as a wind element. Now, this is where now when people say, or when, for example, the traditional manner of observing the breath is through the touch of air at the tip of the nostrils. Mahasakuludayi speaks about the touch or the movement of the abdomen with regards to the breathing, which he said then to observe this, right? And then there are opposing forces saying that Mahasi Sayadaw is wrong, that we should focus on the breath. Now, with regards to the practice, with regards to the Dhamma, both these techniques are correct, because at the end of the day, what is important is the perception of the wind element, right? Perception of the wind element, right? Perception of the wind element. So even with regards to the fire element, which is the perception of the fire, the fire kasina, which is the perception of the fire element, even when one, for example, let us say one is angry, one is, going through a mood, right? With the anger that arises, the heating up of the body, these things can also be taken up, or the heating up of the sort of the head area, right? These things can also be taken as elements of fire that then one could contemplate on. Elements of fire that one could contemplate on. Now, moving on to the 4 color kasinas, right? Moving on to the 4 color kasinas. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? You could raise your hands up if you do. Okay, moving on. The color kasinas. Now the color kasina, right? Now the color kasina. Now before we go on to the color kasina, let us go to the section on mastery, please. The 8 bases of mastery, right? The 8 bases of mastery. Furthermore, Udayi, the path has been shown to my disciples, practicing which they would cultivate the 8 bases of mastery. The 8 bases of mastery. Abhi-vyayatana. Perceiving forms internally within oneself, one sees forms externally in another, limited, beautiful, or ugly. By mastering them, one perceives thus: I know, I see. I know, I see. Right? This I know, I see. Janami passamiti. Janami passamiti. Any time that you read this word, Janami passamiti, or I know, I see, remember the texture is, the text is telling you to contemplate on what you have gone through, in a sense of reminiscing the practice, right? Reminiscing the practice, or at the end of your meditation, you review the practice. Do you understand? But this janami passamiti is not a word that arises, within the vipassana attainments. Meaning sainthood, janami passamiti does not, or is not mentioned. Why is that? Because at that stage, the fruition itself is the experience. The fruition itself is the experience when it comes to vipassana. But when it comes to the jhanas, there is a reflection or reviewing process that is necessary. But when one achieves the state of jhana, like I mentioned before, sometimes when people achieve to this supreme state of jhana, right? Supreme state of jhana, then a person knows. But even at that state, one could come out and choose to review it, right? One could come out and choose to review it. So if one is within or speaking about or going through the process of achieving jhana, and we go through these processes of adverting to the object and then falling into the bhavanga, right? These states where you experience as if you're going up and down, right? In and out, right? These states of these states where you feel like, yes, you're experiencing an amount of peace, but then this amount of peace is also disappearing, right? That is why now with this reviewing process, what happens is you understand or you gain a clear idea about the position that you are in up until you achieve the jhana. Up until you achieve the jhana, right? Moving on. Perceives forms internally, one sees forms externally, limited, beautiful, or ugly. By mastering them, one perceives thus, I know, I see, right? This is the first base for mastery. Perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally, immeasurable, beautiful, or ugly. By mastering them, one perceives thus, I know, I see. Let's read it again. Perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally, immeasurable, beautiful, or ugly. By mastering them, one perceives thus, I know, I see, right? Just take it to just note it, don't try to understand it now. Third, not perceiving forms internally, right? Now the second one was perceiving forms internally. Now the third one, the second and the first were perceiving forms internally. Now we come into not perceiving forms internally. One sees forms externally, right? One sees forms externally, limited, beautiful, or ugly. By mastering them, one perceives thus, I know, I see. The fourth, not perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally. Now it's immeasurable, note that please, immeasurable, beautiful, or ugly. By mastering them, one perceives thus, I know, I see. This is the fourth base of mastery. Not perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally that are blue, indigo, of blue color, blue in appearance, with a blue glow, right? With a blue glow, which we in Pali we call Neela, right? Just as a flax flower that is blue, of blue color, blue in appearance, with a blue glow, or just like Banaras cloth, smoothed on both sides, that is blue, blue in appearance, with a blue glow, even so, not perceiving forms internally, one seeks forms externally, blue, of blue color, blue in appearance, with a blue glow, right? With a blue glow. I see the confused faces. Right? But let's move on. We will understand it by the time we bring it all together. Don't worry about it. Right? Then, by mastering them, one perceives thus, I know, I see. This is the fifth base for mastery. Not perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally that are yellow, of yellow color, yellow appearance, with a yellow glow. With just as a cassia flower that is yellow, of yellow color, yellow in appearance, with a yellow glow, or just like Banaras cloth, smoothed on both sides, that is yellow, yellow in appearance, with a yellow glow, even so, not perceiving forms internally, one seeks forms externally. Yellow, of a yellow color, yellow in appearance with a yellow glow. By mastering them, one perceives, thus, I know, I see. This is a sixth base for mastery. This is a sixth base for mastery. Not perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally that are red, of red color, red in appearance with a red glow. Just as a hibiscus flower that is red, of red color, red in appearance with a red glow, or just like Banaras cloth, smooth on both sides, that is red, red in appearance with a red glow, even so, not perceiving forms internally, one seeks forms externally, red, of red color, red in appearance with a red glow. By mastering them, one perceives, thus, I know, I see. This is the seventh base for mastery. Not perceiving forms internally, one sees forms externally that are white, of white color, white in appearance with a white glow, just as a morning star flower that is white, of white color, white in appearance with a white glow, or just like a Banaras cloth smooth on both sides that is white, white in appearance with a white glow, even so, not perceiving forms internally, one seeks forms externally, white, of a white color, of white in appearance with a white glow. One, by mastering them, one perceives, thus, I know, I see, right? And in this way, many disciples of mine dwell, having attained the accomplishment and perfection of direct knowledge. Of direct knowledge. Now, come down to the Kala Kasina, right? Here, the Kala Kasina, we start with the Kala Kasina, the blue Kala Kasina, Nila Kasina, right? The Nila Kasina is as described in the fifth base of mastery, right? In the fifth base of mastery. Now, this is described specifically in both the Parinibbana Sutta and the Sakuludayi Sutta, right? The Mahasakuludayi Sutta, right? This is specifically the contemplation of the color blue external, right? Of the color blue external, not perceiving forms internally within oneself, one perceives forms externally, right? By which it means that the color kasina, which is the Nila color kasina, Nila Varna kasina, or the blue kasina, is that which you perceive out in the world through a plant, through a board of color, through a wall of paint, through an article of clothing, whatever it is an external object that you use in these terms of mastery. Now, because we are connected to mastery, let me just add to you. We read through the mastery. We went through what we basically read through what the mastery is. You might have not understood what it meant, but now onwards, from the fifth mastery onwards, we are dealing with the Varna kasinas or the color kasinas, right? If you do remember, it was all about contemplating, or the word which is used is perceiving forms externally, not internally, right? Not internally. But the red kasina can actually be perceived internally as well, blood, right? So blood can be used, or blood can be perceived as the kala kasina, but right, it is not a practice which is spoken of, because why are you supposed to cut yourself? You need to see blood for it, right? So we are not in the occupation of self-harm, right? So we do not speak about it, but blood can also be used as an element for the color kasina, but we do not practice in such sort of a manner. What could be used in that way of practicing is when you vomit or when you defecate blood, right? When you vomit or defecate blood, that can be used as a red kasina, linking into asubha, right? Linking into internal factors, but it is not a practice that you would see anywhere, right? Anywhere in the sense you would see it, but it is not a practice spoken of within the main Tipitaka of the Buddha, right? So when we talk about the mastery, with regards to both liberation and mastery, we do not have to go through all levels of mastery, right? We don't have to go through all levels of mastery. You only need one, right? You only need one. So as you go on, now just with the different personality characteristics and traits that we have, we might find affinity to various different kasinas compared to our relatives or compared to other practitioners. I might find myself find myself practicing the Nila Kasana. You might find yourself more drawn towards the other one Kasinas. It differs from person to person, right? From past experiences, characteristics, all of these things. For example, if the color blue is a color that you hate or you do not like or brings back bad memories or something like that, you might find yourself drawn to other Varna Kasinas. Likewise, a person, it is mentioned within the commentary that a person must find mastery within a category that one finds oneself drawn towards, right? And we continue along this path, and as we do continue along that path, we reach the state of jhana. We reach a state of jhana, right? And in this teaching, what we are trying to reach is that specific state of jhana too, right? So you do not have to go through all the 8 bases of mastery. You just need to find one. Some may choose to go through all, but you absolutely do not have to, right? You do not have to. When you take, with regards to any of these flowers or articles that you take as an object for the development of the color kasinas, what happens is you are only supposed to fixate upon the object of color, not the shape of the article, not anything to do with what the article is, but rather just the color of the article, and that's about it. It is through that mastery and repetitive aversion towards the Varna Kasina, that you are then able to advert into the Kasina, right? Advert into the Kasina. But when you take, right, just as in other kasinas, all of these kasinas also have flaws within them. You will very easily find flaws within the kasina. Anything that has a physical base will have a flaw within it, to a perfected or a mind in a higher state of perfection. To say that these flaws will then, at the beginning, you do not focus on the flaws. What we try to do is quite opposite. We try to focus just on the element of color. But as we then progress on, what we then advert the mind to is the flaws existent within this kasina, which will then allow us to transgress and attain higher achievements and attainments, right? Achieve higher achievements and attainments. When it comes to the color kasinas, something that you also have to know. Now, for example, Venerable Moggallana was was an individual who had a very dark skin tone, right? Who was an individual who had a very dark. It was a very dark skin tone, right? And the color that his skin was said to be was Neela. That is why in most places, when you would go to many Sri Lankan temples, if you do visit the Sri Lankan temples, you would find there is one monk with a normal, with a lighter shade of color, painted in a lighter shade of color, yellow or cream or something of that sort. And then you would have another monk standing on to the other side of the Buddha, who would be painted in a blue color, right? A blue, actually indigo blue sort of tone. And this is Venerable Moggallana. So Venerable Moggallana, with regards to Venerable Moggallana's skin color, how fitting it is to talk about this at this point of time, right? Venerable Moggallana's skin color through the years have, this is quite funny also, has gone through a lot of scholastic scrutiny to actually decide what color his skin was. I don't know why this was important. But there is a whole line of study. I think there are also with regards to it, actually comes to the casinos, where people have devoted these PhD theses to trying to discern what this proper color was. Right? So here, I think also in someone could correct me if I am wrong in this. Some also do say that black is a deep extreme tone of blue, right? A deep extreme tone of blue. I don't know if you've heard that, but I have heard that, right? And it is said, a monk actually had told me the same thing as well, and that Venerable Moggallana was actually black, right? And today I discovered on Instagram that Sri Lanka has a Sinhalese African community, right? A Sinhalese African community, which I absolutely did not know of. A Sinhalese African community, and who were enslaved during the time long ago, and they have settled down in Sri Lanka. But Venerable Moggallana apparently was black, right? But we refer to, I don't know why, but we refer to his skin tone as Neela. And when it comes to the Neela Kasina, this is when Venerable Moggallana's skin tone and all of these stories come out. It is very important that we also find a tone of blue that is blue and not mixed into other shades or colors. And that applies to all other casinos as well, right? That applies to all other casinos as well. We have to find that specific tone of blue. So when we say blue, it cannot be a greenish blue or a teal blue. It can't be any of that. It must be a proper clear blue, right, in the Neela Kasina. And that plays a lot of a part in the mental development that one would go through with the Kasina as well, right? Then we go on to the yellow Kasina, and the yellow Kasina is the sixth base of mastery, right? Is the sixth base of mastery. The red Kasina, equally, it's the same thing with all of these Kasinas. The red Kasina is the seventh base of mastery, right? The red Kasina is the seventh base of mastery, right? And the eighth base of mastery, the white Kasina, is the eighth base of mastery, right? With regards to what we are going to discuss further, right? Now the Odatta Kasina, right? The Odatta Kasina, the white Kasina, one could also develop the Odatta Kasina with regards to bones, right? The skeleton, the bones, right? As I mentioned, right? One could develop the red Kasina in terms of blood, right? The Odata kasina can be used to develop, can be developed using the bones. The yellow kasina can be developed for those, I guess, for those of you who have lighter tones of color, lighter tones of skin, one can develop the yellow kasina upon one's skin tone, right? Upon one's skin tone as well. But this is usually not done. This is usually not done because the casinas, when it comes to the casinas, you have to be able to advert to it, and the propensity of seeing the mistakes and flaws is greater when you take such kinds of objects, right? Such kinds of objects. With regards to the elemental meditations or the elemental casinas that we did, the Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, earth, fire, wind, water, this is a more of a feel. The Varna casinas are more of a direct view, right? A direct view. When we say we are focusing on the phlegm, we are not going to be spitting out phlegm to contemplate on the kasina. This is a contemplation within the body, right? But that does not appeal to as successfully to the Varna kasinas or the Kala kasinas, right? Now that we are going to stop there. For those of you who would be interested in going a bit further, I would suggest that you search the Vishuddhimagga and you are able to read this, right? That you are able to read this, right? But in terms of the casinas, what the benefit of you knowing these things is you can then mix and match between the meditation subjects as you progress along the path, right? And it's quite fun and interesting as well, because you are able to mix and match between these different practices, within these different practices, right? Especially, for example, the light kasina, how it can be used in to help with Asava Bhavana, to be help with the Brahma Vihara, Metta, Mudita, Karuna, Upekka, right? All of these techniques as well. So, so make sure, if you are interested, please do go into these texts as well. And we'll be going into the rest of this section on jhana next time, right? On next time, right? Is there any questions that one would like to ask? Devika, do you want to say anything?
I want to ask a quick question.
Even a question is fine, Devika.
You were talking about Buddha being effectively awake, but cognitively shut down, and you were trying to say something about some people being there and about the bolt of lightning.
The Atma.
Yes.
The Atma story, yes.
So a little bit, I would like to know about that.
Yeah, the Atma story is occurrence which a story which happened during the time of the Buddha, where the Buddha was in deep meditation, right? He was in Nirodha Samapatti, right? And during which time there was a bolt of thunder which struck, right? And because of the bolt of thunder, there were two merchants or brothers, and 4 oxen who were killed on the spot with a huge bang of sound. And because of this bang of sound, people came running, and to see, the villagers came running to inquire what had happened, whether a tree had been split or what was this. And they found that the Buddha was quite nearby. And they asked the Buddha, "Oh, great Buddha, didn't you hear that great sound? We came all the way from the village to inquire what, if something had happened." And the Buddha said, "No." Right? And then that is the example which is taken by the commentaries to say that when you are in a dhyanic absorption, when you are in an absorption state, you are affectively aware, yet you are not cognitively aware of everything going on, right? Now, to go a little bit deeper, Devika, just for you, to go a little bit deeper, when we say cognitively shut down, what this also means is, now, for example, when we spoke about the mind arises in 6 places, right? What is the 6 places? At the body, cognizing elements of feeling or sensation. Eyes, at the nose, at the tongue.
Yes.
At the nose, at the tongue. What did I miss? At the ears.
Yes.
At the ears and the heart base.
Yes.
And heart base, where the primary mental cognition happens, right? Now, when we say cognitively shut down, right, with regards to Panchadvara Avajana and Manodvara Avajana, specifically Panchadvara Avajana, when an object appears. Now, for example, let us say you are listening to me, you're listening to this sermon, you're listening to this lecture, participating in the class, but there is a bang upstairs, right? You were not expecting it, you didn't want to hear anything else other than my voice or the teachings, but you hear this bang because the bang was such that, or was of such frequency that when the object appeared as an Atimahanta Ramana object or a very great object, it impinged upon the senses, the Panchadvara Vajana. Because of the Panchadvara Avajana, the mind turned to the object and you were able to hear. Right? Now that process does not happen because we are cognitively shut down. That is what it means, right? To be cognitively shut down. Right? So then when we say effectively aware, that is to mean we are aware in terms of the ekagata, the one-pointedness of mind focused upon the primary base of concentration with regards to the jhana which we are trying to achieve.
Understood.
Understood?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions that we have? Welcome, Devika. Thank you for your question. Any other questions that we have? No? Damsiri, do you have a question? Yes.
You said Nirodha Samapatti, right?
Yes.
Nirodha Samapatti, I thought...
Nirodha Samapatti, it was a Dhyana Samapatti.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. Thank you very much.
Dhyana Samapatti, not Nirodha Samapatti. My mistake.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Dhyana, thank you.
Dhyana Samapatti.
Yeah, Dhyana Samapatti. All right. So if you do not have any other any other questions, read through the handout. Read through the handout, the sutta. This sutta will give us a lot of knowledge regarding the way that we use and the understanding that we have about the jhanas. So once you finish it, it's finished, right? And you have the knowledge, right? Once you finish it, it's finished and you have the knowledge. So be happy that you're doing this. I know this is a long sutta and we spent a couple of weeks on this. I think 2 weeks on this. 2 or 2.5 weeks on this, right? Let's try to finish it very quickly. After we finish this chapter, all the rest, it's quite easy, it's quite fast, but this specific part is a little bit difficult, right? There's a lot of detail. If we are to go into the detail, actually you can write a whole thesis on this. It is such a, if I was to go into the kasinas in the deep depth that is mentioned within the commentaries, we would have to go to the size of the kasinas, the environment, the protections, the attitudes, the people, all of these things. And it would be, but we are primarily focusing on how we move into vipassana, how we sort of develop the jhanas in a way that which supports our vipassana. That is what our primary focus is. If anyone wants to have the fullest knowledge regarding this, very good. Please go on to the Vishuddhimagga, and you can study, read the Vishuddhimagga, and it is very clearly explained within the Vishuddhimagga. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much for joining in. I will see you all tomorrow, and take care and good night.